Novel Navigator. Chapter 231 Mysterious Ability. The sun rose over the horizon like a silent guardian watching over the world below. After the last night's partying, the city woke up slowly and stayed more quiet than usual. Because of increased tension, the taverns and bars officially closed. It was because there were more frequent fights and disturbances breaking out among the patrons. Guilds versus guilds. Factions versus factions. That's why, because it was the last day to have an actual party, most of the guilds drank their fill of alcohol and celebrated before the official closure. It was unclear when they would be open again, but one thing was clear. It wouldn't happen any time soon, as the day that war broke out was fast approaching. Currently in the Dying Star Guild's meeting room, the top members of the guild had gathered for the final meeting before they all would go prepare for the war. They all had their own groups, often used for raids in the dungeon. Now, they were going to be used for war. Orion smiled weakly and said, "Focus on the survival in the war ahead. We're unwillingly taking part of the war, but there is nothing we can do about that. Let's just get through this war in one piece, all right?" They all nodded. Orion didn't have desire for the throne. He was old and didn't have any heirs. However, he cared about his members, and he believed that one of them, Saphira, was destined for the throne. If they won the war, he would just sit on the throne till Saphira was ready to succeed him. It's the only reason he was still fighting in his old age. By the corner of the meeting room, Arxam stood alone with his battleaxe on his back, leaning the axe against the wall behind him. It wasn't clear what he was thinking. "Now, there's some problems," Orion said. "Razor Guild. They used to work closely with us as they have ways of acquiring flasks of setting sun and rising moon, but they've apparently changed sides." "Changing sides days before the war, humph," Qin said. "In these troubled times, we can actually see who is loyal and who is not. We ordered a shipment of flasks from them," Orion said. 500,000 shine coins worth. Instead of delivering them before changing sides, they took the money and the flasks and stopped answering to our letters. Scumbags! Do they think they can just betray us without consequences? What side did they betray us for?" "Nightshade," Orion said. "Nightshade are basically in control of New Karma. I am sure Razor Guild will move there. We don't have any power there." "Are they planning on giving our flasks to them?" Saphira asked. "I would guess so. Our money also goes to their war efforts." "That's the case," Orion said. "Now, Nightshade is protecting them. One of my spies saw a lot of activity in their place. Those flasks are important as our supply is dwindling. I can go knock on their door." Ford smashed his fists together. "Just because we've been kind to our enemies, they think we're soft. We need a proper plan," Saphira said. "If Nightshade's top guys hear about us attacking them, they'll send their hands to deal with us. It'll turn into an all-out fight in these streets. We would just wound each other before the war has officially even begun. I'll go handle them." Arxam finally said a word, and headed to the door. "Brother, stop!" Saphira shouted. "Didn't you hear what I just said? Nightshade is also busy. Their hands are dealing with the final preparations. They can't afford to send a powerful force to protect Razor Guild. When the situation has calmed down, Razor Guild will deliver those flasks over to Nightshade. They can't do it right now. There's too many to carry in inventories. They're also scared about getting robbed on the way back to Nightshade Guild. Thus, they'll wait. This is the best time to attack. Nightshade most likely only accepted Razor to their faction because of those flasks. Without those flasks, they're as good as dead. Razor knows it. They can't get robbed out of them, no matter what." Arxam said and pushed the doors open. "Allow us to at least help you," Saphira said. "Razor is prime mercenary. He alone is already a formidable force." "No. Arksum said and stepped out. Other factions are keeping a close eye on us. They would try something foolish if we all went there. It's better if I go alone, they won't bother to go after me. But... Sap Hero looked conflicted. You heard him. Orion said. Arksum, destruction of Razor Guild is not a priority. Find the flasks. Bring them here. Yes. Arksum replied slowly, and then left. Ha 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 ha. Razor laughed through the food in his mouth. The future is looking promising. His top officers laughed as well, enjoying an expensive steak dinner. To the left of them, the crates of the flasks were piled up high. It was the most important item in their possession, so instead of just storing it in their highly guarded storage room, they decided to keep it close by and in sight at all times. Thus, those crates were right at Razor's office. The office was never empty, and there was always at least 5 guards. When Razor brought another steak piece into his mouth, the floor under him shook, and shouting erupted from outside. They all jumped to their feet and went outside to check what the hell was going on. What's the meaning of this? When they walked outside, they looked through the railing and saw that their front door had been broken down. The members were sprawling on the ground, some injured and others unconscious. Then, like a force of nature, Arksum stepped through the entrance with a battleaxe in hand. When they saw him, they cried out his name. They knew who he was. They feared who he was. Arksum! Razor shouted with a cold face. What's the meaning of this? When he peeked outside, he saw more corpses on the ground. They were all the guards that Nightshade sent for them. He thought they would be enough to keep Dying Star away from their guild, but they were gravely mistaken. There's no way Arksum could have killed all of them single-handedly. He is just royal mercenary. He expected there to be more Dying Stars outside, but seconds went by, and it seemed like it was only Arksum. Send a letter to Ambrose, now. Razor shouted to one of his officers. The officer saluted quickly and turned to carry out the order. Razor jumped over the railing and fell down to the ground below. He landed on his knees, and slowly stood back up like a graceful predator. You've come alone? He asked and pulled out a strange-looking weapon from his inventory. It looked like a hammer at first, but the head was shaped like a crescent moon. Squeeze. Arksum tightened his grip on his battleaxe. All I need is me. Arrogance. Ignorance. Stupidity. Razor charged at him. The crescent moon of a hammer came from far down. It was almost touching the ground, then he swung it up. It swung over his shoulder and crashed down towards Arksum with incredible force. Arksum didn't make a move. The hammer crashed towards him. At that moment, it looked like the ground had expanded. The room turned larger, and the distance between the two of them grew. The crescent moon part of the hammer missed Arksum's head because of that. It only landed on the ground in front of him with a shattering impact. What? Did he suddenly move, or why did it look like I was further away from him suddenly? Razor was confused. At that moment, the distance between the two shrank. Now they were right in front of each other. Mysterious world. Arksum landed his battleaxe on Razor's shoulder and cut so deep that the axe blade got stuck. Arg! Razor coughed out blood. How? I didn't move, and he didn't move his legs. How am I suddenly so close to him? You must be confused. Arksum said. That's its beauty. This place is a little bit bigger to my taste, don't you think so? Razor's eyes widened in shock. The whole building turned smaller. It used to have 3 floors, dozens of rooms, and a large roof. Now, it was as big as a small bedroom. Every member of the Razor Guild that had been hiding in nearby rooms was now inside this same room. They looked shocked and utterly confused. At the corner of the room, the crate with the flasks appeared. This room looked like it was a mixture of many rooms. The office, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and living room, all combined into one. This room was the remnant of the former building. It's like he manipulated space itself here. Razor thought in shock. This is definitely our guild building, but so small now. Arksum removed his battleaxe from his shoulder and moved it over his shoulder, looking like he was readying a wide swing. Now that all of you are in the same room, it's easy to kill all of you in a single strike. Everyone, dodge! Razor screamed. However, there was nowhere they could hide. The room was too small. The only exit was behind Razor, which was now just one door, and he was blocking it with his body. With a single swing, the whole room exploded. The bodies exploded, the blood spewed, the bones shattered, the legs twisted, the arms ripped off. It was a hideous sight. When it was all done and dusted, Arksum walked out of that single room. The building behind him turned to its former size. Now, every wall was covered in blood. Arksum looked at his hands. He was carrying the crates of the flask. Chapter 232, Wilhelm's Words. Real World, Lowlands, Darkstar Household. Within the dining hall, all 20 seats were filled. The dinner had been set. However, no one was eating. Arya sat at the head of the table. She was the only one eating as the others sat in the silence. It was unusual silence. Her daughters and sons were staring at their full plates in silence. It looked like they were waiting for someone. At that moment, the door of the dining hall opened. Wilhelm entered the room with the help of a walking cane. He looked sick and weak, as if he could barely stand on his own 2 feet. One of the daughters helped him to sit down. "Thank you, dear daughter." Wilhelm put his butt on the chair and let the walking cane drop to the ground. "Eat, eat." After those words, everyone grabbed their fork and knife and began to dig into the delicious meal. "If you're planning to be late, please let us know in advance," Arya said, taking a sip of her wine. "You made our children wait. At least they have manners to wait," Wilhelm said. "I see that your plate is half empty. You were too hungry to wait, perhaps. I don't ruin my schedule for you," Arya said and put more food into her mouth. "I am busy, unlike you. You sleep, eat, shit, and repeat. Drop dead already, Wilhelm." The daughters and the sons looked uncomfortable. It was common to hear this kind of argument from both parents, but it didn't make it any less uncomfortable. "Unfortunately, my body is breaking apart. I don't have a spring in my step anymore," Wilhelm said. "It's sad that I got poisoned." "Don't you think so, Arya?" "What are you implying?" Arya said with a chuckle. "That I poisoned you? You're a lowlife, but you're my husband. Why would I do such a thing?" "I never implied anything," Wilhelm said. "However, without me, you would have complete control of this family. I fear for the future of my daughters and sons. I already am in control of this family," Arya said with a chuckle. "I am the sole bread maker in his household. You're head of the family in nothing but name only. What wondrous things you've done with the family," Wilhelm said. "You've made a few of our daughters run away. Remember Amela, do you? A worthless daughter," Arya said and took a sip of the red wine. She had the usual pink skin of someone from Monstrum. Half of the sons and half of the daughters had the same skin color. It was quite exotic and beautiful color. "Since when did it matter how much worth our children had?" Wilhelm asked. "They all should be priceless to us." When the daughters and the sons heard him, their eyes slightly turned damp. In this household, they hadn't heard such words many times, as they were only tools for their mother. "Haha, what a hypocrite!" Arya laughed. "When did you get your golden heart? You're a warmonger, earned your fortune with arms dealing, and you've suddenly grown a heart? Don't kid me, Wilhelm." "Warmonger?" Wilhelm laughed. "My weapons stopped wars. They brought peace and stability to regions torn apart by conflict. I don't claim to be a saint. However, I do believe in redemption." "Redemption?" Haha. Arya laughed. You're as delusional as ever, Wilhelm. Sigh. Wilhelm dropped his fork and knife, picked up his walking cane, and stood from his seat. When he stood up, the daughters and the sons did so as well. Arya was the only one still standing. You may continue eating. Wilhelm limped towards the door. I am not hungry anymore. Yes, run away from conflict, Wilhelm. Arya yelled after him. While you run away, I'll need to get my hands dirty to protect the future of our family. When Wilhelm opened the door, he paused for a moment and said, Mortal Online n/o/vel/b/in. .c//om. Arya frowned. You've sacrificed our children for glory and life there. Your ambitions are high as the sky. Yet, I do believe, there's someone there. Someone special. That will one day kick down your little sand castle. I am protected. Arya rose from her seat. I worked hard to get that protection. My daughters have pleased the king there. No one will be able to touch me. That king, you speak so highly of. Wilhelm turned over to him. Can also die. Get defeated. Lose everything. Just one person is enough to undo everything you did. There isn't anyone that can do that. Arya said. King Moriarty is an embodiment of greatness. My daughters will give him strong sons. Their sons will inherit the throne. Darkstar will one day sit on the throne. There's always someone, Wilhelm said. The world is a big place. I am sure someone has already been born that will challenge him for the throne. You don't think he doesn't know that? Arya laughed. King Moriarty is wise. He knows everything that is happening in the world. Whenever someone that can challenge him appears, he'll destroy that ember before it could turn into a flame. Ha ha ha. Wilhelm laughed and walked away. I now wish to live a few years longer. I want to see this king of yours fall. You want our family to fall? Arya asked angrily. You weak-minded fool. You were never ready to make sacrifices to achieve greatness. I want my daughters to make their own decisions. Wilhelm looked over to his daughters with a smile. My dear daughters. Soon, you can do what you want. Doctor, teacher, or even an artist. The choice is yours. The daughters looked over to him with a soft gaze. They had their own dreams, but whenever they dreamed of something, Arya was there to make sure their dreams would never be achieved. Knowing that there could be a future without Moriarty, they felt like crying tears of happiness. Yet they knew how strong he was. It would not be easy to defeat him. They weren't sure whether it would even be possible. The war was approaching. Maybe, in this war, King Moriarty would fall. Please don't let him win. They prayed inwardly. They hoped that both Imperial Order and Darkstar would fall in the war. It didn't matter to them who won as long as it wasn't one of those two. Arya's face had turned red. She was screaming inwardly and felt the blood boiling inside her. There's no way King Moriarty will ever lose. He has never lost a fight. Arya took deep breaths to relax himself. She started to feel better because she knew how impossible it was to actually defeat him. She felt extremely confident. In a dark room with a computer screen radiating light, Moriarty drank from a can of soda, his eyes focused intently on the screen in front of him. It showed the page of Mortal Online forums. The dark web. Crack. He squeezed the can and threw it in a trash can across the room. It landed among the pile of empty cans. There were posts about the war. They were speculating about who would win the war. There was also a poll. At the top, with an 88% chance of victory, Imperial Order was favored to win. However, there was a heated conversation in the comment section. It was clear that not everyone agreed with the prediction. Ha, Moriarty chuckled. Everyone is mistaken. There's no such thing as war. This is just a culling. It was about time for the 7 ancient guilds to perish. With a laugh, he closed the computer, and the room turned dark. Chapter 233, Declaration of War. Orange hue spread across the sky. It was cloudless, and the sun began to dip below the horizon. Ding, ding, ding. The bells of the cathedral rang with a hollow sound. It didn't sound as bright and cheerful as before, but rather somber and melancholic. The streets turned empty, turning the city into a ghost town. Alone, walking down the empty streets, Zephyr embraced the feeling of loneliness and allowed himself to get lost in the melancholy of the moment. He looked serious and contemplative, his mind consumed by memories of happier times. It was a stark reminder of how quickly things can change. Today was the day when the new world would change forever. When he walked across streets that used to be busy all day, every day, he caught a glimpse of the originals peeking through the windows. They didn't dare to go outside as they felt the hanging pressure looming over the city. They all knew what was going to happen today. It was a long time brewing, and today was the day it was finally going to boil over. Zephyr came to a stop at the intersection of 5th and Main. It had 6 other streets leading into the same exact place. It was like this place was the center of the city. It was silent for a couple of minutes more, but then footsteps came, and 6 more figures walked down their own streets and met at the intersection. Palestar brought a metal bucket. He then tossed it to the middle of the intersection with a loud clang. It seemed empty, but the metal bucket's sides were clearly drenched with some kind of liquid. "Let's get this over with," Arya said and brought a white letter from her inventory. With a slick fire magic, she made the white letter burn and tossed it inside the metal bucket. The metal bucket caught fire, and the flames quickly engulfed the sides. "Dark Star Guild officially declares war against ancient guilds," Arya said. "You seem to be in a hurry," Ambrose said with a scoff. "Hurry to die? Oh, please." Arya rolled her eyes. "Why wait any longer? Did we gather to chit-chat? No, we came to officially declare war under the eyes of God." Palestar looked to the sky. This place was perfectly under the heavenly sky, and some religions believed that the heavens would hear their declarations. It was mostly nonsense, but the churches wouldn't approve this war otherwise. It didn't seem worthwhile to go to war against churches as well for something as minor as this, so they gathered here at this intersection to declare war. Ambrose put a fire on his own letter and tossed it to the metal bucket. The flames inside the bucket turned bigger. Nightshade Guild officially declares war against ancient guilds. Athena took a step forward. She held the white letter in hand, but before burning it, she asked, "Everyone, have you all sensed that something is wrong?" She asked. "Like something is heading in this direction. Your imagination is again running wild, hey, Athena?" Arya said with a scoff. "Burn the goddamn letter. You're just feeling jitters because of the war, as you know your guild won't survive." "Oh my, I am not worried." Athena put the letter on fire. "I believe in my girls." With that, she tossed the letter in the bucket. The flames burned strong. Battle Maidens officially declare war against ancient guilds. Bartholomew looked at the letter in his hand and lit the corner of it with a match. The fire slowly spread until the entire letter was engulfed in flames. With a simple toss, the letter landed on the metal bucket. Smilebacks officially declare war against ancient guilds. "Aish, I guess it is my turn." Orion approached the metal bucket slowly and rummaged through his pockets. He couldn't find what he was looking for, so he started to check out another pocket. Arya's face turned red. "You old geezer, hurry up." She was feeling extremely impatient and wanted to get this over with. Nov. L.B//JNN. After countless sleepless nights, the war was finally here, and she didn't want to wait any longer. "Calm down. I am doing my best," Orion said with a smile, but couldn't find the letter on his pocket. He searched through the rest of his pockets as well, but couldn't find it. Where could it be? Did I leave it back on my desk? Oh my god! Arya cried out. Sir Orion, have you checked your inventory? Athena asked sweetly. Ah! Orion opened his inventory, and a smile broke across his face as he found it. Ah, there! It is! Haha, I forgot about inventory, silly me! With a snap of his fingers, the letter caught fire, and then he tossed it into the metal bucket. Dying Star Guild officially declares war against ancient guilds. Palestar looked at Zephyr. He saw that he wasn't moving. Thus, he approached the metal bucket first and brought out his letter. All 6 guild masters looked at Palestar with frowns. This man was the closest to King Moriarty and had the highest chance of winning the war. Palestar. Arya remembered her husband's words. No, he is not the special one. He won't be the one to steal the throne. Palestar put a fire on the letter and dropped it into the metal bucket. Children of Fair officially declare war against ancient guilds. The remaining gazes landed on Zephyr. None of them thought highly of him before, as he was the most low-key member of the council of mercenaries, but things had changed. He was now one of the factions with S-rankers in their ranks. Zephyr approached the metal bucket, brought out the letter, and made it burn like a torch. With a flick of his wrist, the letter left his hand, floated a small distance, and fell inside the metal bucket where the flames were raging. Zestruction officially declares war against ancient guilds. Zephyr then turned around and started walking away down the long street immediately after his declaration of war. The war had officially started. The other guild masters turned around and headed away from the intersection as well. This was the last time in a very long time that they would see each other on somewhat friendly terms. Next time would be on the battlefield, and they would fight to kill each other. Ding, ding, ding. The echo of the bell sounded like a sad farewell. When the originals and the mercenaries all around the city heard that, they knew the declaration of war had been made. The newsbirds started to fly away with their small wings flapping about. They were taking the news to every corner of the New World. The New World was now in the age of war. The Great Guild War had begun. By the royal palace's high balcony, Conrad Moriarty stood in his royal attire with a white letter in hand. Without him doing anything, the letter started burning in his hand. He tossed the letter over the railing of the balcony. The burning letter started falling down. It burned and burned with strong flames till it turned black and slowly disintegrated into ashes. Imperial Order officially declares war against ancient guilds. Chapter 234, Game of Coin. The inn was eerily quiet. A brown-bearded man drowned his nervousness with a glass of blood whiskey. It was heavy stuff that could knock down a grown man with just one sip. However, he looked just a little bit tipsy. The innkeeper stood behind the receptionist desk. He didn't feel like working, as the atmosphere was just so heavy and tense. The other patrons were lurking near the windows and looking outside. Those bells signaled that the war has started, right? Those were the bells of declaration of the war. The church has now approved the war. It's just blood, steel, and death from now on. Shit. The brown-bearded man said. We're all in for it now. The innkeeper said. You're being sent to the front lines. Yes. The brown-bearded man said in anger. I am part of the Dark Star faction just because the construction company I am working with has a contract with them about building a new storage room for them. I am stuck with Nightshade. Another person said. I hate to work with those fuckers. They've sent our kind to work in mines as slaves. If I had one chance to stab Ambrose in the back, I would gladly take it. Amen to that. The brown-bearded man said. They were all on different sides, but they were all originals and knew that they were nothing but meat shields in the upcoming war. Their lives didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. At that moment, Adam came from the second floor. He saw the solemn atmosphere, ignored it, and headed to the door. Hey, young man! The innkeeper said to him. It's not safe to go outside. The fight can start at any moment. Adam tossed the innkeeper his key of the room. He didn't have any need for it, as this was the last time he would stay in this inn. Thanks for the room, Adam said, waving goodbye as he walked out the door. Stay safe out there. This world has gone mad. The innkeeper said. I'll keep that in mind. Adam stepped out of the door and made sure to close the door behind him. The air was cold and crisp. The church's bells were still ringing with that hollow tone. It would keep ringing till the fight started. I wonder if she has made up her mind about that thing yet. Adam wondered and then headed straight to the cathedral, where the ringing of the bells was coming from. It felt strange for him to walk in these empty streets. It feels nostalgic. This is my third Great Guild War. I am the person with the most wars under my belt, now that I think about it. Strange feeling. In the attic of the Grand Cathedral, Lady Yu gazed out of the window to the empty, dead streets of the Imperium city. Knock, knock. After a knock, Connery peeked his head from the gap and said, Lady Yu, you needed me for something. Lady Yu took a deep sigh and said. Go prepare the holy room for me, please. What? Connery's eyes widened. What for? I might need it. She said. Don't worry about it. I most likely won't. Connery frowned. She couldn't possibly think about doing the ceremony with him. She has strange feelings for him, sure, but she doesn't know him. He doesn't know her. It would be ludicrous. He then nodded and left the attic to go prepare the holy room. What to do? I need guidance. Lady Yu bit her lip. Immediately after that, someone knocked on the door again. Connery, was there some? Before she could finish, the door opened, and instead of Connery, Adam entered the attic. She turned silent like a mime and turned her flushed face away from him to hide her blush. Lady Yu. Adam bowed in a respectful manner. Mr. Adam, the 3 days are up, it seems. Lady Yu said with her back facing him. Yes, I am here for the answer. Adam said. I had been thinking, but I couldn't find the answer. Lady Yu said. Her eyes were slightly red, as she hadn't slept well for the past few nights. I expected you to thoroughly reject me. Adam said softly. You're conflicted, why? Lady Yu closed her mouth immediately after. I can make the decision for you. Adam said and turned to the door. I am sorry for asking for such an unreasonable favor. I will leave now. No, wait. Lady Yu pleaded. Stay. Let's talk about this. Adam raised an eyebrow and turned back to her. His eyes widened as he saw her tears streaming down her face. Why are you crying? Lady Yu dropped on her butt and buried her face in her hands, unable to speak through her sobs. Adam reached out his hand to her, but then his hand froze, and he slowly reeled it back, not daring to touch her. He sometimes forgot that he shouldn't know Lady Yu in this timeline. Whenever she cried back then, he was the one that comforted him, and she cried a lot, which got her a nickname of a crybaby in their circles. I don't know what to do. She shouted through her tears. My brain is telling me no, but my heart is saying yes. Which one is right? Adam hesitated, unsure of how to respond, but seeing her in such distress tugged at his heartstrings. As he watched her struggle with her inner turmoil, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt for the role he played in causing her pain. Which one do you think I should listen to? Lady Yu asked with her teary eyes, looking at him. Adam sighed. I honestly don't know. Lady Yu lowered her head and covered her face with her hands. I have a solution, though. Lady Yu raised her head to look at him and saw him take out a coin. It was a shine coin with 2 sides, one having the face of King Moriarty and the other showing the city of Imperium. Flip a coin. Are you serious? Lady Yu asked. Yes. Adam chuckled. Lady Yu looked at the coin, sat properly on her knees, and nodded. It looked like her mood slightly improved as Adam added some playfulness to the decision. It was because Adam knew that she loved games. City or king? Adam said. If it lands on the side you chose, we're doing the ceremony. If not, we won't, and I'll walk out of that door. Okay. Lady Yu looked nervous and said. City. Adam flipped the coin to the air. It rolled around and around before finally landing back on his hand. With a clap, Adam covered the coin with his other hand, hiding the result. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and showed the result to Lady Yu. The coin lay on his hand. It showed the city side of the coin. Ah! Lady Yu exclaimed, and her heart started beating like a drum. Adam pocketed the coin and said, Are you happy about the result? You can still say no. I am not forcing you to do anything. Lady Yu shook her head. I am not a cheater. That was a fair game, and I'll accept the result n/o/vel/b/in. .c//om. Adam nodded with a slight smile. Chapter 235, Deepening Bond. Step, step, step. Walking down the long, rocky steps, Lady Yu made her way down, with Adam following right behind her. They were clearly heading down, way down like they were heading to the core of the world. These steps seemed to never end, but soon, the bottom was in sight. It was very dry all the way here. The rocky ceilings, steps, and walls had cracks, and through those cracks, the dirt fell like miniature waterfalls, creating a constant dusty haze in the air. After reaching the bottom, they came across a gate that was so tall it seemed to belong to giants. It was made out of twisted metal and had a color of rusty red. Adam's eyes widened open. This was his first time being here, and even though he was supposed to do the ceremony in his past life, he never came all the way to here. This place was very guarded, and only a handful of people had access here. It was the entrance to the holy room. You're here. Connery was standing by the gate, knocked his fist against it, and stared at them with a piercing gaze. He couldn't believe his eyes. The holy room is a very important ceremony in every holy maiden's life, but yet here she is, about to do it with a stranger. He didn't know how to feel about it. Even I am closer to her than he is, so why did she choose to do the ceremony with her? Why not with me or Kyle if she wants to do it so badly? Thank you. Lady Yu said to him and approached the gate. Connery, you may leave. We'll be unavailable for a couple of days. Yes, my lady. Connery bowed and started walking up the steps that led back to the surface, but he couldn't help it and turned around again to look at Adam. What's so special about him? Rancor, yes, but she rejected the king when he wanted to do it with her, so her choice wasn't regarding his status. There's something deeper in the play here. Connery narrowed his eyes and walked away. I never expected her to do the ceremony because of the curse of men. She would have to spend several days alone with a man, and she wouldn't be able to handle that with her curse. This means, maybe the curse isn't activating with Adam. Lady Yu touched her chest and took a deep breath. The curse of men was acting up when Connery was here, but it was all gone now. When she turned to look at Adam, instead of feeling the curse acting up inside her, she felt her face turn warm, and it felt like there were butterflies fluttering in her stomach. You're all right? Adam asked. Yes. Lady Yu nodded and turned to the gate. We must touch the gate together and open it together. Adam nodded and placed his hands against the gate. When he tried pushing it open, it didn't move an inch. Lady Yu put her soft hand over Adam's, helping him push gently. It was a gentle push, but the gate still opened slowly. It opened enough to fit through n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. She took Adam's hand, and they walked through the gate together. After crossing past the gate, they stopped holding hands, and the gate closed behind them. The world beyond the gate was dark and lifeless. There was nothing there but silence. However, then, as if someone flicked the light switch, light descended down upon them, and instead of the place being lifeless, now it was very vibrant with clouds of colorful butterflies fluttering around. The ground was soft as it was made out of clouds, and the place had small hills, also made out of clouds, and the ceiling was a beautiful shade of blue, mimicking the sky above. When they took a breath of the air, it smelled like fresh flowers and honey. This is the holy room. Lady Yu spun around with a smile on face and made her dress twirl around here. This is my first time being here. It was impossible to enter this place alone, and you can only enter with your holy partner. When will we be able to leave? Adam asked. Once the ceremony is over. Lady Yu said. The moment we walked through the gate, we got locked in. The ceremony must now be completed before we can leave. I see. Adam nodded. What do we start with? I've only read about the ceremony, but no one has done this in my lifetime. Lady Yu paused, looking uncertain. I guess we need to learn it together. We should get to know each other, don't you think so? Adam sat on one of the clouds. Smiling. Lady Yu blushed and nodded. You haven't introduced yourself yet, right? My name's Adam Palestar, Adam said. Otherworlder. You have family? Lady Yu asked. Sort of. Adam scratched the back of his head. Little complicated. I have uncle, though. I see. Lady Yu smiled warmly. You can ask something from me. Do you have a family? Adam asked. The church is my family, she said. The Pope is my father figure, the bishops are my brothers, and the congregation is my extended family. No real family? Adam asked. If you're asking who gave birth to me, I don't know. She said. I've only known the church since I was born, and I am happy with that. I see. Adam smiled. We're in the same boat. I don't know my father and mother. They died when I was very little. Oh. She looked softly at him. I'm sorry to hear that. It's fine. I've learned to live with it. Adam said. Sure, I've wondered how they were, but I've accepted that I may never know. As the conversation went on, the invisible connection between them grew, and the bond, which was extremely important in the ceremony, deepened. The war. Are you scared? She asked. Scared? Adam repeated, his voice trailing off. Not yet. Yet. I've been nervous. This is something one can't prepare for. Adam said. I haven't felt fear yet. It's because it is not the fighting that I am afraid of, but the war is a very ugly thing, and fear might come from the uncertainty of what is to come. You don't feel uncertainty now? She asked. I know how the war will start with. Adam said. The battle will ravage the city and burn it all down. It's just the opening of the war. It's the middle and ending part of the war that worries me. You want strength to fight the war, Lady Yu said. I should have asked this before we came here, but are you a reckless person? Do you jump into the jaws of death often? I promise to be more cautious. Adam said with a chuckle. Some of these players think that the war is about who can have the best K/D, but that's not the case. K/D. Lady Yu tilted her head at the term she didn't recognize. Ah, it's a gaming term. Adam scratched the back of his head. It means some people join the war just to kill as many people as possible. Whether it is for experience points or to just have a bet with their friends. Those kinds of people die first. Are you that kind of person? Lady Yu asked. I honestly used to be, Adam said. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted the respect of my peers, so yes, I jumped into the jaws of death more times than I want to remember. Lady Yu hummed in response. I also promise to be safe. Our lives are connected with a single thread, and it's not only you who has to be careful. I believe in you. Adam said with a smile. Lady Yu returned the smile. Chapter 236, The First Casualty. Slip scratched his hands as if they were itchy. I don't want to be here. Why do I have to participate in the war? This is bullshit. Slip shouted inwardly angrily. He was just a young man from the peaceful village of Greenfield. After acquiring the VR pod, he tried out Mortal Online to have mostly fun when he wasn't doing any farm work, and now, 2 years later after that, he was participating in the war. It was a foreign concept to him, as the country where he originated had never seen war before. He'd of course seen movies about war but never thought he would actually experience it firsthand. All right, you sons of bitches. A rough-voiced man entered the room. The room had similar people like Slip, new to the war, green, and scared. They were all part of weak guilds, but because their guilds had to choose a faction to support, they ended up being the foot soldiers of the Children of Fair faction. None of them were from Imperium City either. They were from Driftwood, but they came here for the promotion tests and were taken from there to participate in the first battle of the war. Since they didn't want to sacrifice any member of Children of Fair this early on, they decided to use their allied forces instead. Your job is extremely simple. So simple that even the densest of you would understand. The rough-sounding man shouted. The war is like chess. We need to move our pawns to get to the king. And if we lose a few along the way, so be it. So we're just sacrifices. Slip felt like crying. Fuck this faction. Master Palestar wants all of you to go to the Trigger Street and secure the buildings there. It's a tactical point to push Dying Star's territory. It's right on the edge of their territory, and there is a good chance that they won't guard it. Dying Star has the worst location of all the 7 ancient guilds. They're surrounded by all the guilds, and they have so many places to guard, so there is a chance they've forgotten about the Trigger Street. What if they hadn't? A person asked, will we retreat if we see any sign of trouble? Of course not. The rough-sounding man screamed. If there is any opposition, you must eliminate the threat and create a stronghold there. But. No buts. He shouted. All right, get on moving. Time's of essence, and before Dying Star can rally more troops, you must have the Trigger Street under your control. The group of the foot soldiers neared the Trigger Street. They hid in one of the many alleyways and made sure to keep their steps silent. All right, one building at the time. One of them said, who took the leading rule out of nowhere. We don't want to separate. We're stronger together. We'll need to use the surprise momentum and speed to clear the buildings quick. Slip thought with a frown. If we move together, we're slow and will be seen coming from a mile away. However, he didn't speak out his worries aloud, as it already looked like everyone else was on board with staying together. All right, let's get going. Loudly, they ran out of the alleyway and ran in the middle of the street towards the Trigger Street that loomed beyond. They left the Children of Fair territory and entered Dying Stars. The first building came into view. It was a small, run-down structure with broken windows. However, before they could reach the first building, their leader came to a stop like a deer in the headlights, and everyone else bumped into him in confusion. Why did he stop? Slip wondered, but then he saw why. There was someone waiting for them, sitting in the middle of Trigger Street with a spear in their hand. It was just one person, but their piercing gaze seemed to freeze everyone in place. That's... The leader gulped in fear. Corazian. Corazian. Slip frowned. That name rings a bell. The war is here, hey. Corazian stood up and twirled the spear in his hand. This'll be a nice story to talk about to my grandsons one day. Nov. L. B //JNN. He is just one person. One of them shouted. Let's just kill him. No, I recognize him. Another one said. He's that popular movie star, isn't he? That guy who does martial arts movies and is always doing his stunts. Isn't he? Corazian Chen. It's not only that. Their leader said with a scared look. The Dying Star's top 5 ranked members are called stars. Saphira the dancer is 5th star. It means she is the 5th strongest member of the guild, not counting the guild master. Arksum the strong is the 4th star. Thoroughbred the swift is the 3rd star. Corazian the graceful is the 2nd star. Sephiron the great is the 1st star. This means that Guy is the 2nd ranked member of Dying Stars. One of them cried out. That's ancient guild. The 2nd ranked member would be stronger than most guild masters. Exactly, we encountered the worst kind of opponent. The leader said. We can't win. I knew I remembered his name somehow. Slip's face paled. My guild master talked about Corazian. He lost to him. That man ahead of us is stronger than my guild master. We need to leave. The leader was about to say, but then the spear struck him in the chest, silencing him. When they looked over to Corazian with fear, they saw that he was still standing in his original position. However, the spear in his hand grew long. The spear had a strange ability that allowed it to extend in length at will. Corazian made the spear the regular length once again, but the leader collapsed on the ground as the spear happened to pierce through his heart. He was the first casualty in the war. While twirling his spear around, Corazian again extended the length of his spear, and cut through the group of people while they were too stunned to speak. The heads rolled and the blood spewed. Aya! Everyone turned around and started running away. Slip was among them, his legs moving the fastest. He didn't dare to turn his head around, but he heard the sound of people dying behind him. Without knowing it, he was the only one left and felt like something was approaching him. The death. However, at that moment, someone jumped off the roof and deflected the extended spear before it could pierce through Slip. Slip almost tripped and turned around in a surprise. He just saw a black-robed woman standing in the way of the spear but didn't dare to stay behind and kept running away. Oh! Corazian looked at the woman. Who were you again? All of you sisters and brothers. Look the same to me. Hee, she giggled, and she twirled the daggers in her hand. I am the 2nd sister. Please remember me, okay? I probably won't. Corazian smashed his spear down. The 2nd sister moved her daggers above her head and blocked the spear. The ground shattered underneath her. However, she just giggled and smiled as if the attack was nothing. More than a mere tickle. Oh, I'll make you remember. Chapter 237, Ambush, Blood and Fight. In a narrow alleyway, a group of mercenaries moved silently like ghosts and peeked over the corner to see the ongoings in the street.n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. It looked empty, but when they were about to move there, clashing weapons reverberated through the air. A battle raged in the street. Corazian and the 2nd sister clashed weapons, spear versus dual daggers. It was a heated fight to the death. With a flick of the spear, Corazian smacked the 2nd sister across the face, leaving a deep gash. The 2nd sister stumbled back, blood dripping from her wound. 5-spear death rush. Corazian jumped to the air, and 5 identical-looking spears appeared around him. When he pointed his very own spear at the 2nd sister, those 5 spears shot forward in a lightning-fast attack, aiming to strike her down. The 2nd sister nimbly cartwheeled out of the way, but one of the spears grazed her arm, leaving a shallow cut. Yet she didn't seem worried as she cut through the air with her dual daggers. It created invisible air slashes that flew straight back at Corazian. With his Kiryoka fully activated, Corazian smashed his spear through the air slashes. The 2nd sister threw one of her 2 daggers. It stabbed into Corazian's shoulder. MGH. Corazian grunted with an uncomfortable look. The 2nd sister quickly did some hand signals that looked like her fingers were getting tangled with each other. Gravity dagger. The dagger on Korachon's shoulder suddenly felt like it weighed ton. He crashed to the ground while the dagger buried itself deep into his flesh, slowly cutting deeper and deeper as it was so heavy that his flesh couldn't hold up against it. Korazian yanked the dagger from his shoulder and dropped it to the ground. The pavement cracked once the dagger fell. Pull! The second sister summoned the dagger back to her hand and then entered another round of close combat. With her daggers, she had an advantage over Korazian, who was more of a long-range attacker with his spear that could change lengths at will. However, Korazian wasn't a bad close combat fighter. He twirled the spear around him while deflecting all the daggers that came his way. In the nearby alleyway, the mercenaries noticed that the fight on the street was something they couldn't participate in. It was leagues above their current level. "Let's continue moving," one of them whispered. "Our goal is within the Children of Fair's territory, after all." The backs of their robes had a symbol of a half-cut face, a symbol of destruction. They continued heading deeper into the alleyway that led straight to the enemy territory. They didn't plan to fight over the trigger street, as even if their guild took control of it, they would be in the middle of Dying Star and Children of Fair. It wasn't a strategically wise move to do. They were after something in the Children of Fair territory that was much more important. However, when they came across an alleyway of weedy pavement, the leader suddenly stopped in his tracks. "I sensed something," he said and darted his gaze across the nearby roofs, but didn't see anyone. He was chosen as the leader of this mission because of his decently high level in Kiryoku. It had allowed him to escape danger several times before, as he knew how to accurately sense nearby attacking intent. He could almost swear that he felt a tiny bit of the attacking intent. It was just a little bit before disappearing. It's like someone realized their mistake and quickly hid their attacking intent. Someone who knows how to hide their attacking intent. That person must be pretty high level. The leader thought to himself. What to do? The attacking intent might have not been aimed at us if there are other fights going on nearby. Is something wrong? A person behind him asked. I don't know. The leader gritted his teeth. Follow me. They walked over the weed that was growing in the cracks of the pavement and headed deeper into the maze-like network of alleyways. The leader's mind was racing with thoughts of potential danger lurking in the shadows. At that moment, his heart turned cold as he didn't only feel 2 or 3 attacking intents. It was dozens, coming from every direction. Unlike the one who managed to mask their attacking intent, these ones couldn't, but it was fine as they had already stepped into the trap. Run! The leader screamed. However, before any of them could make a proper move, the arrows rained down on them like a rain shower and stabbed through them like they were voodoo dolls. With blood flowing down the cracked pavement, their corpses lay lifeless in the dimly lit alleyway. Around 15 mercenaries died, just like that. In the nearby roofs, the bow-wielding women looked over, and smiled with each other. The ambush was successful. They were part of Battle Maidens, and since joining the guild, they'd been learning the ways of the ambushes and fighting. It also included learning to mask attacking intents, but they were all just rookies, so most of them hadn't learned it, but they were still very effective with their ambushes. Knowing that it would be easy to find out their location since they couldn't hide their attacking intents, they did their ambushes in these narrow alleyways. It was to trick their own senses. They couldn't have any attacking intent because there was no one to attack. So, they chose a place to ambush, where they didn't know if anyone was about to come, so they didn't know when they would attack someone. So, when one finally enters their trap, they immediately attack. That's how, even if they managed to detect their attacking intent at the last moment, there was nothing they could do. Woo, good job, sisters. A brunette-haired woman said with a smile. Woo. A pigtail-haired woman touched her chest and took a deep breath. That was a close. Who did accidentally let out their attacking intent? That was me. I am sorry. A shy-looking woman raised her hand. I was too nervous, so I couldn't help but think about the moment when we attack someone, so my attacking intent seeped out. Stay calm with your thoughts, next time. The brunette-haired woman said. Luckily, you managed to erase those thoughts quickly. Otherwise, we would have all be in great danger. I'll do better next time around. What'll we do about that? A sharp-eyed woman asked as she looked to the street. Those two are still fighting out there. That fight is beyond our league. The brunette-haired woman said. Guildmaster Athena told us to be careful with the fights we choose. We shouldn't get involved unless absolutely necessary. The fights raged across the Imperium city. It was frightening how fast things turned around. Only an hour ago, it was still quiet and eerily silent. Now, it would be strange if they didn't hear any fighting for more than a few minutes. The originals hid inside their abodes, keeping their children and loved ones close. There was nothing any of them could do when the mercenaries fought. It was like they were humans in the presence of the gods. There was nothing they could do except pray and hope that they would stay safe. Chapter 238, Do You Believe? Corazian evaded the dagger slashes. The second sister panted heavily as she had reached the end of her stamina. While her opponent, Corazian, looked still fairly good despite the intense battle. With a jump backwards, Corazian made some distance to her, then extended the length of his spear and smacked it into her waist. She felt as though a baseball bat had struck her. The hit sent her flying through a nearby building's window. When her flight stopped, she noticed a family of originals hiding under a table. When they saw her, they started weeping uncontrollably and hugged their loved ones. Corazian jumped through the broken window and swung his spear down, but she stopped it once again with her dual daggers. Stop it! She shouted. There are innocent beings here who have nothing to do with our fight. So? Corazian kicked her in the stomach and growled. You'd think I would pull my punches because of them? I won't fall for your tricks. We can go back to the street to continue this fight. The second sister shouted. There's no trickery behind this, n/o/vel/b/jn. .c//om. As if. Corazian extended the length of his spear and cut through all the walls while simultaneously sending her flying into the air. She flew and crashed into a wall. Corazian pointed his spear at her and extended the length of the spear. The spear stabbed through her waist and pinned her to the wall. She tried to pull the spear out of her waist but to no avail. Corazian lifted her up while she writhed in pain and slammed her straight to the ground. He then lifted her up again and smashed her to the wall. She let out a scream as the pain shot through her body. The health dropped to dangerous levels. She tossed her daggers to the ceiling. They stabbed into the ceiling right above Corazian's head. Corazian raised his head to the ceiling. Gravity daggers. The weight of her two daggers changed, and that caused the ceiling to fall apart because of their new heavy weights. Corazian jumped out of the way and returned his spear to its former length. The ceiling fell down and happened to fall right on top of the table, with the originals hiding right under it. The ceiling's debris buried them under its weight. Haha, as I expected. Corazian shouted. You acted like you cared about their lives. You just wanted to use them to kill me. Pull. Now freed from the spear, she summoned the daggers back to her hand and attacked Corazian like a wild beast. Her attacks were furious, fast, and precise. A few cuts appeared here and there on his body. The second sister kicked him in the chest, then into his jaw, and finally at the temple. Blood began to trickle down his face, and Corazian stumbled out of the house. She tossed her daggers again. The two daggers stabbed the ground around Corazian. One to the left side of him and the other to the right side. With quick hand signals, the daggers multiplied into a dozen more, surrounding Corazian on all sides. Corazian's expression hardened. You're making me angry. The second sister said angrily, and her hair started floating upwards as if the gravity around her changed. Gravity force. Corazian crashed on his knees, and the pavement under him shattered. It felt like a boulder suddenly landed on top of his head, as it felt like something very heavy was pushing him down. The gravity inside the circle of the daggers increased tenfold. He couldn't lift his spear, let alone move. Ha ha ha! Corazian laughed, and the spear turned longer. The tip of the spear happened to be pointing at the second sister's right leg. Thus, after it turned longer, the blade stabbed right through her leg, causing her to cry out in pain. Corazian struggled greatly but managed to pull one of the daggers off the ground. It was one of the two main daggers, thus the gravity spell broke apart. He was able to move once again. Corazian pulled his spear back and smacked it across the second sister's face. She flew far away and crashed into a building about 100 meters away. When he jumped after her and rummaged through the debris to find her, he couldn't find her anywhere. She had escaped. Humph! Corazian landed back on the street and checked his timepiece. The reinforcements should be here soon. The holy room. A lady Yu moaned with flushed cheeks. Right there. Ahem. Adam awkwardly smiled as he kneaded his hands against her back on one of the tense muscles. Is that good? Yeah, Lady Yu smiled and looked at him with a blush on her cheeks. You're good at massaging. Where did you learn it? My caretaker made me his massaging slave. Adam said with a chuckle. When he was young and Sarah came from work, tired like a dog, he would massage her feet and back to help her relax. It was the least he could do, as he had a roof over his head and got to eat warm food every day. He was also afraid of being abandoned if he didn't do anything to help them, so he did a lot for the family. Lady Yu felt light as a feather and smiled with satisfaction. She was surprised that she was able to be touched by a man and didn't feel absolutely repulsed. Instead, it felt strangely good. Adam leaned on the cloudy hill and just relaxed. There was nothing much to do in this holy room, so he decided to enjoy the peace and quiet for as long as possible. After all, once he left this place, he would enter the war, and it would be chaos and noise everywhere. Lady Yu gracefully sat on her knees and looked at Adam with just a smile on her beautiful face. She was also enjoying the peace and quiet for a moment before it would all be gone. The last few weeks had been very stressful. They knew that the war was coming. What's up? Adam felt her gaze and turned to look at him. It's nothing. She shook her head, but then she felt like she was flying as there were some more questions she wanted to ask. You can ask anything, Adam said. He knew her very well, and after seeing that slight crunch of her eyebrows, he knew she was hiding something. Lady Yu bit her lip and asked. You said you don't have much of a family left, but do you have anyone you care about except your uncle? A loved one, perhaps. I do, Adam said. Why you do? Her eyes shook, and it sounded like she was about to choke on her own words. Her name's Alice. Adam said with a sigh. She's from the other world. You love her? Yeah. Adam nodded. Very much so. I see. Lady Yu lowered her head and bit her lip, feeling a pang of sadness in her heart. This ceremony has another name. Do you know what it is? Marriage ceremony, is it not? Adam looked at her. Lady Yu's eyes widened in surprise. She was surprised that he knew the answer. Do you believe in soulmates? She asked with a nervous tone. Before, no. Adam chuckled. Now, yes. Because of Alice? She asked. Yes, and because someone used to convince me about it. Adam looked at her with a smile. And she couldn't help but feel a flutter in her chest. Why did he look at me when he said that? She wondered with her heart racing. Chapter 239, Oldman. After a whole day of fighting, it turned calm as soon as the sun hid behind the horizon and the moon replaced it on the sky. Imperium City was sleeping, but some shadow lurkers were still out and about, doing who knows what under the cover of darkness. Swoosh, swoosh. Through roof to roof, a shadow dodged the moonlight and moved swiftly. He was heading to the gates of the Imperium and seemed to be planning on leaving this wretched city behind. However, when he arrived on top of one of the pitched roofs that overlooked the gates, he saw a couple of guards there. The gate behind them was closed. N/O/vel/b//in.c//om. With both hands, he pulled two knives and threw them at the guards. The first knife successful took down one of the guards, but the second one quickly placed his shield on the way of the knife. The knife bounced off the shield. The shadow did quick hand signals and whispered, "Shadow shift." With a strange magical spell, he changed positions with the knife that bounced off the shield, and the guard looked taken aback. He kicked the guard in the neck area and made him drop down to his knees. With his right hand, he pulled out his knife from the corpse of the first guard and stabbed it into the heart of the second guard. The guard let out a final breath of life before dying. Snap! With a snap of his fingers, the knife, which he changed positions with, returned to his belt. Then he grabbed his other knife tight, and its small blade started to turn red, as if it were about to burst into flames. It was now extremely hot, and if anyone dared to touch it, they would surely get burned. The gate stood in his way with its durable metal bars. However, then he started cutting through the metal bars with his knife. In usual circumstances, that would be an impossible feat, but slowly and surely, because of the heat, the knife went rather easily through the bars. With the knife moving up, then to the left, and finally down, a portion of the metal bars fell to the ground. There was a nicely human-sized hole in the gate. He put his knife back on his belt that had strangely cooled off in a matter of seconds. Music. He stopped on his tracks with cold sweat drenching his back. A strange music echoed from some distance away. It sounded like someone was strumming a banjo. It sounded all too familiar. No, it's him. Richard wanted to run through the opening in the gate, but his legs refused to move. Move, move, move. He wanted to raise his hands to block the sound of the music, but he couldn't even move his arms. The sound of banjo came closer and closer. Soon, it sounded like someone was playing it right beside his ear. Richard couldn't turn around to see the face of the musician, as if some invisible force was holding him in place. Richard, tch, your mother will be very angry at you," Oldman said while slowing the speed of strumming. He had short grey hair like a storm cloud and had a hat covering his eyes. The banjo on his arms was worn from years of use but still emitted a beautiful sound. His leather armor looked basic, some black metal vambraces protected his forearms, and there was a single sheathed knife on his right leg's thigh. "Old man." Richard gritted his teeth. "Isn't this little too much? My mother's top protector came to take me back there. What if you got ambushed and died? A little too big of a risk, don't you think so? Your mother was angry that you left," Oldman said. "He wanted you to return safely. Thus here I am. You can tell my mother to piss off," Richard shouted. "I am not going back there. You don't have a choice." Oldman started to play his banjo again, and the sound turned very dark and foreboding. Without being able to fight against the sound, Richard felt like he was about to fall asleep at any moment. However, he then was able to unbuckle his belt and make it fall to the ground with his knives on it. Large expansion. The knives bulged through the belt's fabric and turned from small, almost harmless objects into 2-meter-high blades. The knife appeared between Richard and Oldman. For some odd reason, Richard was able to move again as if the music didn't affect him anymore. The music spell needed to fulfill 2 conditions in order for it to work. First, one had to have a clear view of the target, and second, the music had to reach one's ears. He was only able to fulfill the second condition, but that wasn't enough. Because of the large knife between them, Oldman couldn't see Richard. He quickly peeked around the knife to catch a sight of Richard, but didn't see him anymore, but then saw a shadow jump over the knife. Richard twirled in the air before kicking Oldman across his waist. The kick sent him sliding a few meters. It didn't look like it hurt him even the slightest. Oldman, now that he had a clear sight of Richard, started strumming his fingers across the banjo like a possessed demon. The music turned loud, powerful, and amazing. However, for some odd reason, Richard didn't stop like before, even though the sound was piercing through his ears, and he had clear sight to him. At that moment, Oldman noticed that something was peeking from Richard's ears. It was a white cotton ball to stop all sound from reaching his eardrums. "Oh, not bad, kiddo." Oldman grinned from ear to ear, but then he started playing another song. Boom! The ground ahead of Richard exploded. Richard looked pale-faced, and he quickly approached Oldman while jumping left to right. With his other hand, he made one of the knives regular-sized and summoned it back to his hand. The ground continued to explode, but it was as if Richard knew exactly where each explosion would occur, and he dodged them all while approaching him. Drilling kick. Richard slammed his foot against the banjo, and his feet started spinning like the drills bit. It seemed like the banjo would break, but at that moment, the banjo's color turned to a hue of red. As soon as it did, Richard felt a pang of pain in his feet, and had to retreat. It felt like he was trying to kick through a wall of solid steel. "This was funny and all, but I sense some troublemakers heading in our way," Oldman said, and with a single strum of the banjo, Richard's legs fractured like twigs under the pressure. "Ah!" Richard collapsed on the ground and coughed out blood. Oldman knelt before him, removed the cotton balls from his ears, and drummed a sleepy melody that immediately put Richard to sleep. At that moment, figures appeared ahead, hunching on top of the roofs. They were all belonging to different factions. "Sorry, did I disturb you all's sleep?" Oldman chuckled innocently. "I am just bringing a troublemaker back to his mother, do you mind?" "It's him," the fifth brother said with a serious look. "Oldman." Florence of Battle Maidens whispered with a serious look. "The strongest man of the Dark Star faction, Oldman." Persephone, the second hand of Ambrose, said with a grin. "I am too pretty, and young to die. Therefore, goodbye." With that, she left. It didn't take long for others to turn around and leave as well. They didn't want to gamble with their lives this early on, and if their factions lost them on the first day of the war, it would be a big setback. Oldman tossed Richard to his shoulder and said, "All right, your mother Arya is awaiting you." Chapter 240, 4 Cities. Dawn Watch. With the night covering the streets, birds with their small wings flew into the city, and brought with them news about the ongoings of the Imperium city. Every day, the guilds had been waiting for one particular set of news, and today, they received them. It was a moment of silence, as the guild leaders read the newspaper of the war happening in their capital city. All of them had already chosen their factions. There was no going back. In this war, hundreds of guilds would fall and perish. Currently in the Crescent Serpents Guild building, they gathered in the meeting room, which was basically a war room for the time being. They had also chosen a side. The war would be extremely ugly for guilds such as them, Tier 3 guilds that didn't really have strength to survive through the war. Also, they chose a side of the war that was risky, and perhaps the weakest of them all, Destruction. The war has begun. There's no stopping that now. Reese, the guild master of the Crescent Serpents, said and pointed at one spot in the map. Imperium City will be covered in flames for several days. That is all the time we have to strategize. Ron tapped his finger against his arm while thinking about things. The frightening reality came true. There was still a chance that war wouldn't happen, and even though it was minimal, there were some people who had hope. Ron was one of them. However, deep inside him, he knew that it was impossible odds. The first battle will last a couple of days there. Reese said. When the fight over Imperium City is over, the losing guilds will migrate to their strongholds. we can assume that Zestruction won't be able to win over the Imperium city. Thus, they'll head to Honey Village, and I think we should start heading there, as well.
Sounds good, boss. This war will be a fight for our survival. Reese said. I need everyone to log on more often from now on. I've seen people not logging out as often anymore because of the war, but we need them. We don't have time for cowards. New karma. The war. A loud-mouthed, short-bodied man shouted. What will we do? Shut up. Young shouted and read through the newspaper with a grit on his teeth. You're breaking my eardrums. I am sorry. Shut the fuck up. Necroman sat on his throne, reading through the newspaper on his hands. A small smile played on his lips. Yo, boss. Young called out. When will we head out? Why such a hurry? Necroman asked with a chuckle. The war is not going anywhere, my friend. What about Ambrose? The loud-mouthed man asked. Has he given us any instructions? Yeah, he did. Necroman showed a torn-apart letter. Fuck him, though. Aren't we part of his faction? Young asked with a frown. We are, but only because I like his vision of the future. Necroman said with a grin. Weak for the slave, strong for the master. Cleaning through the dirty floors, Ramon and Hannibal listened intently. Their bodies had undergone a transformation, with muscles peeking underneath their flesh, and they had shed off their previous baby fat. A war. Ramon scrubbed the floor with a frown. This could be a chance. I can finally make a name for myself, and move on from cleaning all the time. Hannibal had the same thought. The cleaning had become an everyday routine of their lives, and they'd gotten extremely tired of it. If they do well in the war, perhaps they could move into Necroman's inner circle, which had plenty of benefits. Women, wealth, and power. When I join the battlefield, I'll fucking kill everyone. Ramon grinned. And no one will stand in my way. Driftwood. The harbor was chaotic as everyone was running away like scared rabbits. It was all because of one ship. A black-sailed ship that was heading straight to them. The guards of Driftwood were on high alert. When the ship arrived by the harbor, they dropped the anchor and dropped the gangplank to the wood-made dock. With the gangplank down, the pirates started to make their way onto the land, and they all looked more ferocious than the last. They noticed that the harbor was empty. The originals had retreated to their homes, and the mercenaries were looking over to the harbor, but not a single one of them made a move. This pirate group was extremely infamous, and if they wanted to, Driftwood would be in flames by morning. After the pirates departed from the ship, scrawny-looking Seth stepped down the gangplank, pulling up the hood of his cloak to conceal his face. Right behind him, Iman and Edwardius left the ship and joined the other pirates in the dock. With wind blowing, it brought a newspaper, floating towards Iman's feet. It landed right by his feet. Iman picked it up, cleaned it off the sand, and began to read the headline about a recent war. In the Imperium city. The war has already started, Iman said with a scoff. He dropped the newspaper, and left the dock with Edwardius, the army of pirates following. Right behind them. Wherever they went, doors closed, windows got shut, and people hid. It was like a plague had entered their city. Seth picked up the newspaper, and read through the article. Without any emotion, he tossed the newspaper to the sea, and followed after Iman and the rest. Eben Reach. Troubling news, Digby said. Adam just headed there, and the war started. Lucette shouted. I knew we shouldn't have allowed him to go there. Calm down, Lucette. Valera said. He knew that the war might start at any day, ever since Digby sent the letter to Zephyr. He was prepared for this outcome, and he knows what he is doing. He'll be able to handle himself there. Digby closed the newspaper. We've got other troubling matters to discuss. Lucette and Valera listened.
After the first battle is over, we'll most likely be summoned to join Destruction's war party. Digby said. The good thing about Ebon Reach is that the rulers of the city won't allow any fighting here. Thus, we'll be safe here. Other guilds won't come after us for being in opposite factions, but as soon as we leave the city behind, anything can happen. What will we do? Valera asked. Start gathering supplies, Digby said. We'll need flasks of the setting sun and rising moon. Destruction won't supply us with those. Visit blacksmith. Increase the durability of everyone's armor and weapons, take money from the guild account. Valera nodded and headed out of the office to do the things she was ordered to do. As Digby sat back on his chair, someone knocked on the door, and after allowing the person enter, Lydia entered the office with a bow. Guildmaster Digby, your uncle is in the front lounge. What? Why? Digby frowned. He is here to talk about the war, Lydia said. Lucette frowned as well, as this was very suspicious timing. Digby waved his hand. Bring him here. I'll talk to him alone. Lucette, go help n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Valera. All right. Lucette and Lydia left the office. What does he want? Digby muttered to himself, feeling a sense of unease.